I sort of trained through a phase like in the late 2000s, where, and even like 2010 to like 12 probably, where powerlifting was starting to pick up traction, like in the, I guess, the natural community, like raw powerlifting,
The power building.
The power building. And I think before that, I had rarely like done squat, bench, and deadlift before that. Like it was actually more similar to how I train now, if my focus is on hypertrophy. But seeing, guys like Lane, who was successful in both sports, and seeing like, okay, these guys that are getting stronger over time are getting bigger as well. And I think that sort of led me down a path of being overly assertive with progression for, schemes and things like that. And also starting to, fall into that same trap of biasing specific exercises or having this, okay, like I think objectively I knew like, okay, why wouldn't a hack squat be equally, as effective as a back squat for quads? Like I feel them, they're working hard in both cases, but
it's not the king of exercises, bro.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, Tom Platz told me to. Right. so it's the, or like, you got to deadlift to get a big back, and it's like that's probably, it's low on the list of exercises I would use from an efficiency perspective for hypertrophy now. And I think that's something that's been, over the past like 8 years where I've started to fall away from that and kind of get back to the roots of early training and realizing like, okay, there's we have a large palette here that we can use, and tools available to us. So yeah, I think not romanticizing specific lifts, I think is something that a lot of us have done in the past. And I think it's still a refinement process for me, and, finding exercises that, I know work well for me, but I feel like I can do for an extended period of time without starting to feel worn down.
There's a lot there I could echo on. Like for me, if I can go back in time, like I think mindset, like I kind of touched on earlier about just being more humble and willing to learn from, not just one camp, but learning from a lot of different people. Because early on, like I said, I met up with that guy who taught me about Menser's HIIT and all that, which is great because he taught me structure and there was a lot of positivity from that. But at the same time, I got caught up in drama, and this is not even the social media era, but at the time, like prior to that, I should say, like Menser and Schwarzenegger, right? Like Schwarzenegger is the high volume guy, Menser's the low volume guy. So there was like the drama around that. And then we got Dorian Yates kind of saying, hey, my competitors are in the gym like 10 hours a week and I'm only in the gym for like 2 hours a week. So, I kind of got caught up in that drama, and then I kind of identified with that HIIT camp. And anytime someone would challenge me on it, whether it's like, it wasn't social media back then. For me, it was like the local gyms or, my place of employment. Like I would talk with people there about training and stuff. So it was always like this debate, arguments, and I got caught up in that drama. And like, I was like, in a sense, like felt like I was getting attacked. Mm-hmm. Like, hey man, my way of training, like I made these gains, bro. I'm making more gains than you. So it was like an ego thing. And it held me back. Like I've talked about this on many podcasts. Like it held me back. I was caught up in that for like 16 years. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I met these other guys here, like Berto and Brad and Eric. They're like, hey, there's other ways of doing things. Nutrition-wise, Berto's the one that kind of taught me about flexible dieting. And that it was hard for me to kind of let go of like the approaches that I had, because like it was ingrained. Like by the time I met these guys, I've been training for like 23, 24 years, kind of where Berto's at now. I mean, you can see how far ahead in the game Berto is 23 years versus where I was, just because of the mindset, just like, again, trying to defend ego and trying to decide on one particular camp. And now with that, like with young people, people just starting out, I see that all the time online. That's like totally intensified now. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, man, if you just become a little more humble and you let walls down and you listen to, even if you don't agree with someone, like listen to, like actually honestly listen and see if there's anything there that maybe can work for you, that you can implement. And I think what we've all learned now that we're like 20, 30 years deep into this is that we need a lot of tools in order to keep advancing our careers. Like you talked about exercise selection, right? Like I'm in pain a lot when I train. And so I'm always having to, find different exercises or nuance them, in different ways, whether I'm like, okay, moving hand spacing or slowing down rep speeds, whatever I can do to keep myself training pain-free, because that's going to keep me in the game.
Yeah, I think a piece of advice for, I think even novices or anyone really, because there's plenty of intermediate to advanced lifters that are still in this situation. Like if you find yourself identifying with a specific camp on a topic, like that's a red flag, I think, and more often than not, or if you look to one specific person and don't ever question, anything they say, or you just assume it is truth, I think that can lead you down a similar path. So, and you see that a lot. I mean, with exercise selection, with, high volume, low volume, like just be, like you said, just like be open, humble, and embrace the fact that like you're mastering your own process, and that's going to take some time and trial and error.
It's crazy because a lot of the similar sentiments, because I remember there was a short stint where I got to train pretty much by myself without a training partner. Something about my life made it so that I didn't have as much time to just navigate through what at this point was already starting to become an overwhelming amount of sources. And I look at the things that I was doing, and it's crazy. It's especially nowadays where you have like just a general understanding by walking into a decently complete commercial gym. It's like, okay, that lat pull downs for that, this is for that. Like, it wasn't like, 50 years ago where like some people, it's, you got a barbell, bro, figure it out, So, I kind of just would go in there and intuitively just do a lot of the things that felt good. And if they didn't feel good, I just wouldn't mess with it, And I look back and I'm like, wow, it's like I was making really good progress that way. I felt good. And then at some point, like whether it was like my training partners or whatever the current IFBB pros were doing, I started to include those things back in. And so then my training became this like just this mess of like all these things that were going on, with addition of the things that were going on, like that I started with, it I thought were quite productive and just felt really good and natural to me. And it's crazy because in the back of my mind, I kind of knew that it was that core stuff that was moving the needle, but I had to deadlift, I had to bent over row, I had to the incline presses with the barbells never felt good for me. The more and then vertical barbell even worse. But I was doing them because everyone said it was essential that I do. And it's like I'd progress because I was so stubborn about making those move and just including them in my program. But I knew in the back of my mind that, okay, like I legit think it's like it's my lat pull down, my neutral grip lat pull down that's doing a whole lot more for me compared to this barbell row. But I have the barbell row, because I'm probably wrong, was my assumption. And then when it really dawned on me, I was doing T-bar rows, like with like the barbell like in the corner. So we were all messing up that gym wall, and I remember a skinny little fireman dude who just gym acquaintance. I asked him to like stand on the back and like help me out so that I can T-bar row, and anyhow, it was loaded, so like that first rep was hard to pick up because it's all the way out here. It's like the worst pull off the floor you can do, and then you kind of have to scoot your legs forward. The ROM is super short because
You're shrugging.
and the plates, right? You have to use 45s. Who's going to use 25s, right? And I remember I finished my set, and he's like, and there was things that happened along the way to complete that set. Like it was just all over the place. Like, you know, it wasn't a smooth process. And I remember him looking at me, and he was like, "Man, that's a pretty fucked up exercise." And like in the back of my mind, I was like, "No, like don't you say that? Like you haven't seen Ronnie Coleman T-bar row like what is it, like 10 plates or something." I was like offended. Didn't say anything, but I was like, I hate the fact that he's right and he was able, as kind of a gym casual, able to like pick up on that. So I remember, like I should have listened and I should have rewired a few things, because when the power building thing came up, there's just certain things about it that structurally for me, they work until they don't. And, you know, I think in hindsight, we can all look back and think and you know, realize that what made people make some really good progress when it came to a lot of those power building systems was the fact that it got people to think objectively about their training, as opposed to like other metrics like the pump, you know, the burn. So for the first time ever, they were, you know, actually trying to get their numbers to drive up, which like when you're like an early to mid-level intermediate, like that is kind of sort of what you should be doing. But yeah, I guess I'd say like, man, like because connective tissue is so important. And I think especially for like my young, like 20 somethings, they're at that place where it's like, trust me, you haven't done nearly as much as like some of like the folks in our generation have. Like just like listen to your body. If something doesn't feel comfortable, whether it's because it's just a shitty exercise, like, you know, the T-bar row I was doing, or because your technique is off, it's like find something else that just generally trains that area. Is it I don't know, is it like a tier 5 movement for that area? Maybe, but the fact that you're going to be able to train with that movement for like these long periods of time, like uninterrupted, where you don't hurt yourself, that's gonna beat out anything else. So yeah, being able to trust that, especially once you are like an early intermediate, it's like trust like the feedback that your body's trying to give you. It's not always right, but I do feel when it comes to like movements or exercises or techniques where you do feel like, hey, you're fighting the weight and your own body, that's a big red flag.